3 weeks passed after the failed meeting at the Grand Nexus. Taekwon spent most of that time in his quarters aboard the Horizon's Edge, writing reports that no one on Earth wanted to read. Humanity's grand entrance into galactic society had failed. They were back where they started, alone and unwelcome. Then the screaming started. It wasn't physical screaming. The Velkari didn't have mouths that made sounds. Their screams came telepathically, blasting across the communication networks in waves of pure terror. Every telepath within 100 light-years felt it. Even humans who couldn't read minds felt something, a pressure behind their eyes and a cold feeling in their stomachs. Ji-hai burst into Taekwon's quarters without knocking. "Captain, you need to see this." The main screen showed chaos. Reports flooded in from across Velkari space. Talvax Prime, a colony world with 3 million Velkari citizens, had gone silent. No communications. No telepathic signals, nothing. Then another colony, Kresh, reported attacks. The transmission cut off mid-sentence, ending with a flash of light and then static. "What's happening?" Taekwon asked. "We don't know yet," Ji-hai said, "but the Velkari are terrified. I've never seen anything like this." Commander Bin-woo appeared on another screen, broadcasting from Earth's deep space monitoring station. "Captain, we're picking up the attackers on our scanners. I'm sending you the data now." What appeared on screen made Taekwon's blood run cold. They weren't ships in the normal sense. They were living things, massive creatures that moved through space like sharks through water. Each one was as big as a small moon, covered in armor-like scales that seemed to shift and change color. They moved in groups, coordinating their attacks with frightening precision. "Do we know what they are?" Taekwon asked. Bin-woo's face was grim. "The Velkari database has a match. They're called Ravagers. According to the records, they're supposed to be extinct." Ji-hai pulled up the ancient files. The text was written in old Velkari script, but the translation software worked through it quickly. What it revealed was a nightmare. 10,000 years ago, the Ravagers had nearly destroyed the Velkari civilization. They were apex predators from a world even harsher than Earth. They hunted in packs using a kind of group intelligence that let them coordinate attacks across entire star systems. They didn't build technology. They didn't need to. Their bodies were living weapons, capable of surviving in the vacuum of space, traveling between stars, and breeding at an incredible rate. The Velkari had barely survived that ancient war, and they hadn't done it by fighting. They had run. They'd abandoned their outer colonies, retreated to their core worlds, and hidden behind massive shields while the Ravagers eventually went dormant and disappeared. The Velkari had never actually defeated them. They just waited them out. Now the Ravagers were back. Another transmission came through, this one directly to Taekwon. It took him a moment to recognize the face on the screen. It was Veltion Prime, the same high speaker who had mocked humanity just weeks ago, but he looked different now. His crystalline form was dim, flickering. His mental voice, usually so strong and confident, came through weak and desperate. "Captain Taekwon," Veltion said, and even through the translation, Taekwon could hear the fear. "I am contacting you on behalf of the Velkari High Command. We need your help." Taekwon remained silent, waiting. "The Ravagers have returned," Veltion continued. "They've already destroyed 5 of our colonies. Millions of our people are dead. We've evacuated our remaining outer worlds, but the Ravagers are pursuing. They're heading for our core systems, for our homeworld. Have you contacted the other council species?" Taekwon asked. "Yes," Veltion said, and his voice cracked. "None of them have military forces. None of them know how to fight. The concept is foreign to us. We evolved beyond such things, but the Ravagers did not. They are predators, pure and simple. And you need predators to fight predators," Taekwon said quietly. "We accessed your historical archives," Veltion admitted. "We studied your wars, your strategies, your weapons. What we once called primitive and barbaric, we now understand was necessary for survival. You know how to fight because your world forced you to learn. Our world gave us everything freely, so we never learned to struggle, never learned to defend ourselves." Ji-hee stood next to Taekwon watching the screen. She whispered, "He's asking for help after what they said to us." Taekwon held up a hand, still focused on Veltion. "High Speaker, 3 weeks ago you told me that humanity had nothing to offer. You said we were inferior. You wanted us to serve as your laborers." "I was wrong," Veltion said, and those 3 words seemed to cost him everything. "We were all wrong. We judged you by our standards. never understanding that different worlds create different strengths. Your violence, your conflict, your endless struggle for survival, these weren't weaknesses. They were training. Training for a threat we forgot could exist. "Why should we help you?" Taekwon asked. The question wasn't cruel. It was honest. Veltion was quiet for a long moment. "Because you're better than us," he finally said. "Not more advanced. Not more intelligent. But better. We would never help a species that had insulted us. We would let them suffer as punishment for their disrespect. But humans have something we lack. You have empathy that extends even to those who have wronged you. You have a code of honor that compels you to protect the weak, even when the weak don't deserve it." On another screen, Lieutenant Da Mi was analyzing the Ravager attack patterns. She was Taekwon's tactical officer, and she'd spent her entire career studying military history. She looked up from her work and caught Taekwon's eye. "Captain," she said quietly, "these patterns, I recognize them. They're hunting patterns, pack behavior. The Ravagers are doing exactly what wolves do, what lions do, what sharks do. They identify the weakest prey, separate it from the herd, and strike. The Velkari are running, which makes them look weak. That's triggering the Ravagers' hunting instincts even more." "Can they be stopped?" Taekwon asked. Dami paused. "By the Velkari? No, they don't have the mindset for it. But by us?" She smiled grimly. "Humans have been dealing with apex predators since we lived in caves. We know how to fight them. We know how to hunt the hunters." Taekwon looked back at Veltion on the screen. The proud high speaker who had dismissed humanity so easily now waited for their answer, helpless and afraid. "Send me all the data you have on the Ravagers," Taekwon said. "Their biology, their behavior patterns, their attack methods, everything." "Does this mean—" Veltion started. "It means I'm taking this to Earth Command," Taekwon interrupted. "I can't make this decision alone, but I'll recommend that we help. Not because you deserve it, High Speaker, but because this is what humans do. When monsters come, we stand between them and the innocent, even when the innocent aren't very nice to us." Veltion's form brightened slightly with something that might have been hope. "Thank you, Captain." "Thank you." The transmission ended. Jihai turned to Taekwon. "Are you sure about this? They treated us like dirt." "I know," Taekwon said. "But we're not helping them to make them like us. We're helping them because it's the right thing to do. And maybe," he paused, "maybe this is how we show them who we really are. Not by talking about our values, but by living them." He opened a channel to Earth. Within an hour, he was in a virtual meeting with the entire Earth High Command. Admiral Han Yong, the head of Earth's defense forces, listened to Taekwon's report in silence. When it was finished, the Admiral sat back in his chair. "So they mocked us, rejected us, and now they want us to die for them?" Han Yong said. "Yes, sir," Taekwon replied. "And you want us to do it anyway?" "Yes, sir," Han Yong smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who understood what duty meant. "Then we'll do it. Not for the Velkari, for ourselves. Because if we don't stand up to these Ravagers now, they won't stop with Velkari space. They'll spread, and eventually they'll come for Earth. Better to fight them now on our terms." He stood up and his face hardened into something that generals had worn throughout human history. "Alert the fleet. We're going to war." Around the table, other officers nodded. Orders began flowing out across human space. Ships that had been docked for years fired up their engines. Soldiers who had been training for conflicts that might never come suddenly had a real enemy to fight. Weapons that had been maintained as relics of a violent past were loaded and armed. The galaxy's most dangerous species was going to war. And the monsters that had terrified the Velkari were about to learn what true predators looked like. Captain Taekwon stood in the Grand Hall and felt very small. The ceiling stretched so high above him that he could barely see it. All around him, beings from across the galaxy gathered in their assigned spaces. Some floated in the air. Others stood on platforms built just for their strange bodies. A few existed as clouds of light that shifted and changed color as they communicated with each other. Taekwon was just a human. He wore his best uniform, the dark blue one with the Earth insignia on his shoulder. His hands were sweaty, but he kept them still at his sides. Next to him stood Jihai, his diplomatic aide. She looked calm, but he knew she was nervous too. They had traveled for 6 months to reach this place, the Grand Nexus, where the greatest species in the galaxy made their decisions. Today was supposed to be special. Today, humanity would finally join the galactic community as official members. 200 years had passed since humans first left Earth and discovered they were not alone in the universe. 200 years of watching from the sidelines, of being tolerated but never truly welcomed. Today was supposed to change that. A sound like crystal bells filled the hall. Everyone fell silent. From the highest platform, a being made of what looked like living diamond descended. Its body caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. This was Velthion Prime, the High Speaker of the Velkari, the most advanced and respected species in the galaxy. We gather today, Velthion's voice echoed directly in Taekwon's mind, to welcome the newest species to our council. The humans of Earth have requested a seat among us. Taekwon felt a strange tickling in his thoughts. The Velkari were telepathic. They spoke by touching minds, sharing ideas instantly and perfectly. Humans couldn't do that. They had to use words, slow and clumsy words that could be misunderstood. The Velkari found this amusing. "Step forward, human," Velthion commanded. Taekwon walked to the center of the hall. His footsteps echoed too loudly in the silence. He could feel thousands of eyes and other senses he didn't understand, all focused on him. "You come from a strange world," Velthion continued. "Your files tell us that Earth is what you call a death world. Is this true?" "Yes, High Speaker," Taekwon replied. His voice sounded rough compared to the musical quality of the telepathic voices around him. "Earth has many dangers. Extreme weather, natural disasters, and predators," Velthion interrupted. A wave of something that might have been laughter rippled through the minds of the assembled beings. "Your world had creatures that hunted and killed other creatures for food. How primitive. How barbaric." Taekwon felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice level. "Our world shaped us, High Speaker, as all worlds shape their children. We learned to survive." "Survive," Velthion repeated, and the word dripped with contempt. "We Velkari evolved on a world of abundance. We never needed to survive because we never faced such crude threats. We achieved consciousness through cooperation and mental unity, not through violence and fear." Ji-Hai stepped forward. "High Speaker, if I may explain. The challenges of Earth taught humanity valuable lessons about adaptation, problem-solving, and taught you to be killers," another voice interrupted. This one belonged to a Chitauri delegate, a being that looked like a massive insect with too many legs. "Your history files are filled with wars. You fought each other for thousands of years. You created weapons specifically designed to harm your own kind. This is not civilization. This is madness. We've moved beyond those conflicts," Ji-Hai said firmly. "Humanity is united now. We've had peace on Earth for over a century." "A century," Velthion said, and somehow his mental voice conveyed a smile. "The Velkari have known peace for 10,000 years. We never needed to move beyond violence because we never embraced it in the first place." Taekwon felt anger rising in his chest, but he pushed it down. Getting angry wouldn't help. "High Speaker, we came here today hoping to join your council as equals. We have much to offer." "Equals." Velthion's laughter filled every mind in the hall. "Humans, you have barely left your own star system. You have no telepathic abilities. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your lifespans are tragically short. Your bodies are fragile. You require constant sustenance and rest. You are in every measurable way inferior to every species in this hall." The words hit Taekwon like physical blows. Around the hall he could sense agreement from the other delegates. No one spoke up for humanity. No one defended them. "We are not asking for charity," Taekwon said, fighting to keep his voice steady. "We're offering partnership. Every species has unique strengths. Your strength is violence," Velthion said, "and we have no need for that here. The galaxy is at peace. We have maintained harmony for millennia. What use would we have for a species that solves problems by breaking things and hurting others?" Ji-Hai's hand found Taekwon's arm, a gentle warning. "Don't escalate this. Don't give them more reasons to dismiss us." Velthion descended lower, until his crystalline form was level with Taekwon's face. "However, we are not cruel. We will allow humanity to join the galactic community, but not as equals. Your role will be different. We have work that our advanced species find beneath them: manual labor, simple tasks, physical work that requires no great intelligence or skill. This is where humanity can serve." "Serve?" Taekwon repeated. "You're asking us to be your laborers." "We're offering you a place," and Velthion corrected. "Be grateful. Many species are never invited to the Nexus at all. You should be honored that we're willing to accommodate you, despite your obvious limitations." Taekwon took a deep breath. He thought about Earth billions of miles away, He thought about all the people who had worked so hard to reach this moment. He thought about 200 years of hope and effort. And he thought about the words his grandmother had told him before he left. Never bow to those who demand it, only to those who earn it. Hi, Speaker, Taekwon said clearly. I respectfully decline your offer. Humanity will not serve as laborers. We offer partnership or nothing at all. The silence that followed was absolute. No one had ever refused the Velkhari before. Velthian's form seemed to brighten with anger, casting harsh light across Taekwon's face. Then you offer nothing at all. You are dismissed. Humanity's petition is denied. Leave this hall and do not return until you've learned your place. Taekwon turned and walked away. Ji-Hai followed. Behind them he could hear the mental conversations resuming, full of amusement at the foolish humans who thought they were equal to their betters. The doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder. In the corridor outside, Ji-Hai let out a shaky breath. That went well, she said with bitter humor. We maintained our dignity, Taekwon replied. That's something, his communicator buzzed. A message from Earth marked urgent. He opened it and saw Commander Bin Wu's face tense and worried. Captain, we have a situation. Unknown vessels have entered the Outer Rim. They're heading toward Velkhari space. I'm sending you the tracking data now. Sir, these ships, they don't match any known signatures. And they're moving fast. Whatever they are, they're not here to talk. Taekwon looked at the data flooding his screen. Dozens of ships, maybe hundreds, all converging on the Velkhari's home systems. He looked back at the closed doors of the Grand Hall, where beings made of crystal and light laughed at humanity's primitive ways. Keep monitoring them, he told Bin Wu. Record everything. I have a feeling the Velkhari are about to learn why predators exist in the first place. He closed the communication and stood in the empty corridor with Ji-Hai. Neither of them knew it yet, but everything was about to change. The galaxy's most advanced species were about to face something they'd never encountered before, something they had no idea how to fight, and humanity, the species they'd just rejected, would be their only hope. The Velkhari had never seen a human warship before. When the Earth Defense Fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Velkhari space, every sensor in the system locked onto them in shock and awe. Admiral Han Yong stood on the bridge of the carrier Indomitable, the flagship of humanity's response force. Behind him stretched 19 more warships, each one built with one purpose, to fight and win. They were sleek and dark, covered in armor plating that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. Weapons bristled from every surface. These weren't exploration vessels or science ships. These were tools of war, refined over centuries of human conflict. The Velkhari military coordinator, a being named Senth, appeared on Han Yong's screen. Senth's crystalline form trembled visibly. Admiral, your ships. They are so aggressive in design. So threatening, Han Yong nodded. That's the point. We built them to scare our enemies before the fighting even starts. Psychology matters in war. We have nothing like this, Senth admitted. Our vessels are for transport and exploration. We've never needed weapons. You need them now, Han Yong said. Where are the Ravagers? The tactical display lit up with red markers. There were hundreds of them, spread across 3 star systems, all moving toward the Velkhari homeworld. The Ravagers weren't rushing. They were methodical, consuming every colony they found, growing stronger with each victory. They'll reach our homeworld in 5 days, Senth said. We've evacuated most of the outer colonies, but millions of our people are still in the path of their advance. Han Yong studied the map. Then we have 5 days to prepare. Send Captain Taekwon to your homeworld. He'll coordinate the defense from there. I'll take the fleet and hit the Ravagers before they can group up for their final push. Within hours, Taekwon found himself standing in the Velkhari command center, deep beneath the surface of their homeworld. The room was filled with Velkhari officers who had never fought a battle in their lives. They looked at the tactical displays with confusion and fear, unsure what any of it meant. Ji-Hai worked at a nearby console, adapting Velkhari sensor technology for military use. The Velkhari had incredible scanners that could detect a single ship from light years away, but they'd never thought to use them for tracking enemies. Now Ji-Hai was reprogramming everything, turning peaceful tools into weapons of war. Captain, one of the Velkhari officers called out. His name was Kelth, and he was young for his species, only 300 years old. I don't understand this display. What do these symbols mean? Taekwon walked over and pointed at the screen. Red symbols are enemies. Blue are friendlies. Green are civilians we need to protect. These lines show predicted movement patterns based on their previous attacks. How do you know where they'll go? Kelth asked. Because they're hunters, Taekwon explained. And hunters are predictable. They go where the prey is easiest to catch. We use that against them. We make places look easy to attack, but they're really traps. The concept seemed to fascinate and horrify Kelth in equal measure. You think like them. Like predators. We have to, Taekwon said. You can't beat an enemy you don't understand. And we understand predators because we used to be the most dangerous predators on our world. We know how they think because we think the same way when we need to. The first battle happened at Kraxus, a Velkari industrial world. Commander Bin Wu led a squadron of 20 fighter craft against a Ravager swarm that numbered in the thousands. The Velkari watched through their sensors, certain they were about to witness humanity's destruction. They watched Bin Wu's fighters approach the swarm in a loose formation. The Ravagers, seeing prey that seemed disorganized, rushed forward to attack. That's when the trap sprung. The human fighters suddenly tightened their formation, concentrating their fire on the leading Ravagers. Explosions bloomed in space as the front rank of creatures died. The Ravagers adapted quickly, spreading out to flank the humans. But Bin Wu had expected that. All fighters, execute scatter pattern Delta, he ordered calmly. The human ships broke apart, each one flying a different direction at maximum speed. The Ravagers, confused by prey that suddenly scattered, hesitated. That moment of hesitation cost them. Hidden weapon platforms that the humans had positioned hours earlier activated, catching the Ravagers in a crossfire. Lieutenant Da Mi watched from her station aboard the Indomitable, calling out coordinates and timing. Fire artillery in 3, 2, 1, now. Kinetic rounds, simple chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds, tore through the Ravager swarm. No fancy energy weapons, no complicated technology, just mass and velocity, the most basic physics turned into devastating force. The Ravagers had never encountered resistance like this. They were used to prey that ran, prey that panicked. The humans didn't either. They fought with cold, calculated precision. Second wave incoming, Da Mi reported. Adjusting fire patterns, the battle raged for 6 hours. Human fighters danced through space, always moving, never sitting still long enough for the Ravagers to pin them down. Every maneuver had a purpose. Every shot was calculated. This wasn't just fighting. This was art born from thousands of years of warfare. When it was over, the Ravagers had lost 5,000 creatures. The humans had lost 3 fighters. The pilots of those fighters had ejected safely and were already being recovered. In the Velkari command center, the silence was absolute. They had just watched 20 humans defeat an enemy that had destroyed their entire civilization 10,000 years ago, and the humans had made it look easy. How? Belthion Prime whispered. He had come to the command center to witness the defense of his homeworld. How did they do that? Taekwon pulled up a recording of the battle. Watch here, he said, pointing to a moment when Bin Wu's fighters scattered. The Ravagers expected us to stay together like prey in a herd. When we scattered, they didn't know which target to chase. That confusion gave us the advantage. But you lost 3 pilots, Belthion said. Doesn't that matter? Of course it matters, Taekwon said quietly. Every loss matters. But those pilots knew the risks. They accepted them. That's what soldiers do. They put themselves in danger to protect others. I don't understand how you can accept death so easily, Belthion said. We don't accept it easily, Taekwon replied, but we accept it as necessary. Every human who fights knows they might die. But they also know that if they don't fight, everyone dies. We'd rather lose a few than lose everyone. The concept was completely alien to the Velkari. Their entire civilization was built on the idea that every life was sacred and must be preserved at all costs. The humans shared that value, but they understood something the Velkari didn't. Sometimes preserving life requires risking it. Admiral Han Yong's fleet engaged the main Ravager force 2 days later. The battle took place in deep space, far from any inhabited worlds. Han Yong had deliberately chosen the location, drawing the Ravagers away from civilian targets. The Ravagers came in massive numbers, thousands of the creatures converging on the human fleet. They moved like a living tide, overwhelming everything in their path. The Velkari, watching from their homeworld, were certain the humans would be destroyed. Instead, the human fleet opened up with everything it had. Missiles streaked through space. Railguns fired solid projectiles at relativistic speeds. Energy beams carved through Ravager bodies. The space between the two forces became a storm of destruction, but the Ravagers kept coming. For everyone that died, 2 more took its place. They crashed against the human ships like waves against rocks, tearing at armor with claws that could rip through steel. Shields holding at 60%, an officer reported to Han Yong. "Continue firing," the admiral ordered. His voice was calm. "Redirect power from non-essential systems to weapons. If they want to get close, let's make them regret it." The human ships weren't trying to avoid the Ravagers. They were standing their ground, creating a wall of fire that nothing could pass through. It was brutal. It was terrible. It was working. Then Demi called out, "Admiral, I'm detecting a concentration of Ravagers moving around our flank. They're trying to surround us." Han Yong smiled. "They're learning." "Good. It means they're smart enough to adapt." "Execute Plan Omega." The human fleet suddenly changed formation. What had looked like a defensive wall transformed into a moving sphere, each ship covering the others. The Ravagers trying to flank them found themselves facing fresh weapons, fresh shields. There was no weak point to exploit. "They're breaking off," Dami reported. "The Ravagers are retreating." It was the first time in recorded history that the Ravagers had retreated from a fight. They'd met something they couldn't simply overwhelm with numbers. They'd met an enemy that fought back with intelligence and determination. Back in the Velkari command center, Tai Quan watched the celebration around him. The Velkari were amazed, relieved, and grateful. But Tai Quan didn't celebrate. He knew this wasn't over. Ji Hai came to stand beside him. "We won," she said. "We won a battle," Tai Quan corrected. "The war isn't over." The Ravagers retreated, but they didn't flee. "They're regrouping, learning. They'll come back with a new strategy." "Can we beat them again?" Ji Hai asked. Tai Quan looked at the tactical display, at the red markers that represented thousands of Ravager creatures still out there in the dark. "I don't know," he admitted, "but we'll try." The Ravagers returned 3 days later with 3 times their previous numbers. This time they weren't just attacking, they were hunting with purpose and intelligence. They'd learned from their losses. Admiral Han Yong stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched the sensors light up with red markers. "Too many to count. Too many to fight head-on. They're not making the same mistakes," he said quietly. "They've adapted." "Sir," Lieutenant Dami said from her station, "they're splitting into smaller groups, attacking from multiple directions simultaneously. They're using the tactics we used against them." Han Yong smiled grimly. "They're smart. I was hoping they wouldn't be." He turned to his communications officer. "Get me Captain Tai Quan." On the Velkari homeworld, Tai Quan was standing on the moon's surface watching as thousands of human engineers worked around the clock. They were turning the moon into a fortress, installing weapon batteries, shield generators, and mines. Specialist Hua-Na supervised the construction, her team working with incredible efficiency. "Captain," she reported, "we'll have the primary defense grid online in 18 hours. The moon will be the most defended position in this system." "Will it be enough?" Tai Quan asked. Hua-Na looked up at the stars where the battle would soon take place. "Honestly, I don't know. We're making a trap, but if they don't take the bait, all this work won't matter." That's when Han Yong's call came through. "Captain, I need you to make the moon look like our last stand. Make it obvious that we're fortifying it. Let them think we're desperate and cornered." "You want them to attack the moon?" Tai Quan asked. "I want them to commit everything to it," Han Yong replied. "Predators focus on wounded prey. We're going to look wounded." It was a dangerous gamble. If the Ravagers saw through the deception, the human fleet would be caught in a trap of their own making. But if it worked, they could hurt the Ravagers badly enough to end this war. The Ravagers came on the 4th day. Their bioships filled the space around the Velkari homeworld, blocking out the stars. There were millions of them now, a swarm so large it looked like a living storm. In the command center, the Velkari watched in horror. Velthion Prime stood next to Tai Quan, his crystalline form dim with fear. "There are too many," he whispered. "Even humans can't fight that." "Watch," Tai Quan said simply. The human fleet fell back, looking disorganized. Ships that had fought so perfectly before now seemed to scatter randomly. Several ships broadcast false damage reports. The Ravagers, sensing weakness, pressed their attack. Then the fleet retreated to the moon exactly as planned. The Ravagers followed, hungry for the kill. They poured into the space around the moon like water through a broken dam, so focused on their prey that they didn't notice the trap closing around them. Now, Han Yong said quietly. The moon lit up like a second sun. Every weapon battery fired at once. Mines that had been disguised as space debris detonated. Shield generators created walls of energy that channeled the Ravagers into narrow corridors of space where human guns could hit them more easily. But the most devastating attack came from above. Dami had spent days positioning satellites in high orbit, each one carrying a simple tungsten rod. Now those rods fell, accelerated by gravity and rocket boosters until they were moving at incredible speeds. When they hit the Ravager bioships, they punched through armor like paper. The destruction was massive. Thousands of Ravagers died in the first minute, thousands more in the second. The survivors tried to retreat, but the human fleet had moved behind them, cutting off their escape. The hunters had become the hunted. Commander Bin Wu led boarding teams onto damaged Ravager ships. His soldiers moved through the organic corridors with practiced efficiency, gathering samples and data. What they found changed everything. "Captain," Bin Wu called from inside a Ravager bioship, "you need to see this." The transmission showed a chamber deep inside the ship. It was filled with Ravager, young, small, and weak, huddled together. They weren't attacking. They were hiding. "They have children," Bin Wu said. "These creatures aren't mindless monsters. They're protecting their offspring." Taekwon felt something shift in his understanding. He pulled up all the data they'd collected on Ravager behavior and started analyzing it differently, not as a soldier studying an enemy, but as a human trying to understand another living being. "Ji-Hai," he called out, "pull up the Ravager migration patterns. Show me where they came from." The map appeared on screen. The Ravagers had come from the far edge of the galaxy, from a region where several stars had recently gone supernova. Their former territory was now a radiation-soaked wasteland where nothing could survive. "They're refugees," Taekwon said slowly. "They didn't attack because they're evil. They attacked because they were starving and desperate. Their worlds were destroyed and they fell back on their instincts, hunt or die." Veltaion Prime looked at the data in disbelief. "Are you suggesting we should feel sorry for them? They've killed millions of our people." "I'm suggesting we should understand them," Taekwon replied. "Understanding doesn't mean forgiveness, but it might mean finding a solution that doesn't end with complete extinction." "You want to negotiate with them?" Veltaion asked. "That's impossible. They're animals. So were humans once," Taekwon said. "We were apex predators who hunted and killed. But we learned to be more than our instincts. Maybe the Ravagers can too." Admiral Han Yong's face appeared on screen. He'd been listening to the conversation. "Captain, what are you proposing?" "A ceasefire in one sector," Taekwon said. "We stop shooting and we broadcast a message. Not in words. In the universal language that all predators understand, territory and resources. We show them there's another way. It was the riskiest decision of the entire war." Han Yong was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Do it. But if they attack, we respond with full force." Taekwon worked with Ji-Hai to create a broadcast. They couldn't use language the Ravagers would understand, so they used chemical signals and behavior patterns. The message was simple. "Stop attacking sentient species and we will help you find new worlds. Continue attacking and we will destroy you completely." The response came 6 hours later. A single Ravager bioship approached under a primitive truce signal. It was damaged, moving slowly. Aboard was something the humans hadn't known existed. A Ravager queen, the intelligence that guided the entire swarm. Through chemical signals and careful translation, the queen told her story. Her people had lived peacefully in their home systems for thousands of years, hunting non-sentient creatures and breeding slowly. Then the stars began to die. Radiation poisoned their worlds. Their food sources vanished. The queen made a terrible choice. Lead her people in a desperate migration, attacking anything they found, or watch them all starve to death. "We did what we had to do," the chemical signals translated roughly. "Survival demands harsh choices." Taekwon understood that better than most. "I know," he said. "Humans have faced the same choice. We've done terrible things to survive, but we also learned that survival doesn't have to mean destroying everyone else." He made an offer that shocked both the Ravagers and the Velkari. Humanity would help relocate the Ravagers to uninhabited star systems in the Outer Rim. In exchange, the Ravagers would enter a controlled hibernation cycle, waking only when humans gave permission. They would be monitored, but they would live. You would spare us? The Queen's signals asked. After what we've done? We're sparing your children, Taekwon replied. They didn't choose this war. They were just trying to survive. Every species deserves a chance at survival, even predators. Especially predators, because we understand how hunger and fear can drive anyone to desperate actions. The Queen accepted. The war ended not with annihilation, but with understanding. The Ravagers began their migration to the new systems, escorted by human warships to ensure they kept their word. In the Velkari Command Center, Veltion Prime struggled to comprehend what had happened. You showed them mercy, he said to Taekwon. After all they did, after all the death, you gave them a second chance. We gave their children a second chance, Taekwon corrected. That's different. The Ravagers who attacked will be held accountable. But their offspring shouldn't pay for their parents' crimes. That's the difference between justice and revenge. I don't think we could have done that, Veltion admitted. If we had your power, we would have used it to destroy them completely. We were so afraid. Fear makes it easy to kill, Taekwon said. It takes courage to show mercy. And it takes wisdom to know the difference between an enemy who must be destroyed and an enemy who could become something else. Ji-Hai stood next to him, looking at the stars where the Ravagers were beginning their journey to new homes. Do you think it will work? Do you think they'll keep their word? I don't know, Taekwon admitted. But I know this, we're giving them a chance to be better than their worst instincts. That's all anyone can ask for. It's what humans needed once when we were learning to be more than just killers. Someone had to believe we could change. Now we're giving the Ravagers the same chance. The galaxy watched in amazement as humanity demonstrated something none of them expected. The most dangerous species in the universe wasn't dangerous because they loved violence. 6 months passed after the end of the Ravager crisis. The Grand Nexus convened once again, but this time the atmosphere was completely different. The Great Hall, which had once echoed with laughter at humanity's expense, was now silent with respect and something else. Fear, perhaps. Or maybe just the uncomfortable realization that everything they thought they knew about the universe had been wrong. Captain Taekwon stood in the same spot where he'd been dismissed months earlier. But now he wore the uniform of Earth's official representative to the Galactic Council, and no one laughed when he walked to the center of the hall. High Speaker Veltion Prime descended from his platform. His crystalline form was brighter now, recovered from the fear that had dimmed it during the war. But there was a new quality to his presence, humility. Captain Taekwon, Veltion's mental voice rang through the hall. On behalf of the Velkari people and this entire council, I offer you our deepest apology. We judged your species by standards that had nothing to do with true worth. We saw your history of conflict and called it primitive. We saw your capacity for violence and called it barbaric. We were wrong about everything. We were wrong, Veltion continued, because we forgot that the universe is not a safe place. We evolved on worlds of peace and plenty, so we assumed peace and plenty were the natural state of existence. You evolved on a world of constant danger, and that danger taught you lessons we never learned. When real threats emerged, our advancement meant nothing. Your experience meant everything. Taekwon listened without interrupting. Around the hall, representatives from all 17 species watched and waited. We invite humanity to join this council as full and equal members, Veltion said. And we ask for more than that. We ask that you teach us what you know, how to defend ourselves, how to think strategically, how to face danger without running away. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, a species was admitted to the council not in spite of their violent past, but because of it. The galaxy needed protectors, and humanity was the only species that understood what that meant. But the council's next vote was even more significant. They proposed the creation of the Galactic Defense Initiative, a permanent military force that would protect all species from external threats, and they wanted Admiral Han Yong to lead it as Supreme Commander. Han Yong stood before the council, his uniform crisp and his bearing proud. I accept this responsibility, he said, but only under certain conditions. The Defense Initiative will be a volunteer force. No species will be forced to serve. Every member will be there because they choose to be, because they believe in protecting others. Second, he continued, we will not be conquerors or enforcers. We defend against outside threats. We do not police the galaxy or force our will on others. Every species keeps its independence and sovereignty. Third, and most important, Han Yong said, looking directly at Veltion Prime, humans will not be the only ones fighting. Every species must contribute. You want protection? Then you must be willing to protect yourselves too. We'll teach you how, but you have to do the work. The council agreed to all three conditions. Within weeks, the first training programs began. Young Velkari, Chitari, Theronis, and members of a dozen other species volunteered to learn military tactics and strategy from human instructors. Lieutenant Dami found herself teaching a class of 60 alien students about tactical thinking. Most of them had never even considered the concept of strategy. War was so foreign to them that they struggled with even basic ideas like flanking maneuvers or defensive positions. Why would you ever want to be on the defensive? A Chitari student asked. Doesn't that mean you're losing? Defense doesn't mean losing, Dami explained patiently. It means choosing where and when to fight. Sometimes the best attack is to let your enemy come to you, where you've prepared the battlefield in your favor. The concept seemed to blow the students' minds. They'd spent their entire lives thinking that conflict was something to avoid entirely. The idea that you could control and shape conflict was revolutionary to them. Ji-Hai worked in a different capacity. She established an exchange program where humans taught combat theory while learning from the other species. The Velkari's telepathic coordination, for example, could be incredibly valuable in military applications. The Chitari's multi-layered thinking patterns helped with complex strategy. The Theronis' fluid movement principles applied to space combat tactics. The fusion of human military knowledge and alien capabilities created something unprecedented. The defense initiative became more than just humans protecting everyone else. It became a true unified force where every species contributed their unique strengths. Commander Bin Wu oversaw the monitoring stations in the Outer Rim, where the Ravagers had settled into their new territory. The agreement held. The Ravagers entered hibernation on schedule, and when small groups woke to hunt, they targeted only non-sentient creatures. Human peacekeepers maintained a constant presence, ready to respond if the Ravagers broke their word. But something unexpected happened. Young Ravagers, hatched after the war, grew up knowing humans not as enemies but as the species that had given them a home. They began communicating more, sharing their understanding of the universe. The Ravagers might never be friends with the galaxy, but they were no longer monsters in the dark. 3 years after the crisis, Tae Kwan stood on the observation deck of the new Defense Initiative headquarters, a massive station built at the edge of known space. Ships from 17 species conducted training exercises in the space around the station. Velkari cruisers practiced evasive maneuvers. Chitari fighters executed attack patterns. Theronis vessels coordinated with human carriers. It was messy and imperfect. The different species still struggled to work together. Cultural misunderstandings caused problems daily. But they were learning, growing, becoming something new. Ji-Hai joined him at the window. It's strange, she said. A few years ago they were laughing at us. Now they depend on us. That's not quite right, Tae Kwan replied. They depend on what we represent. The willingness to face danger instead of running from it. But look at them out there. They're learning to do it themselves. That's what really matters. Do you think they'll remember? Ji-Hai asked. When things are peaceful again, when there are no more threats, will they remember why they needed us? Tae Kwan considered the question. Maybe not. Probably not. Peace makes people forget about the cost of staying safe. That's natural. But that's okay. We're not doing this for gratitude or recognition. We're doing it because it needs to be done. Admiral Han Yong approached them, his face showing the wear of 3 years managing the most complicated military organization in galactic history. Captain, I wanted to tell you personally. The Council approved the expansion. We're building 10 more training facilities across the galaxy. Every species will have access to defense education. That's good news, sir, Tae Kwan said. Han Yong looked out at the training exercises. You know what the hardest part of this job is? It's not teaching them to fight. That's actually pretty easy. The hard part is teaching them when not to fight. Teaching them that violence is a tool, not a solution. That having the power to hurt someone doesn't mean you should use it. That's the lesson only humans could teach, Tae Kwan said. Because we learned it the hard way. We spent thousands of years hurting each other before we figured out that strength without restraint is just destruction. A communication alert interrupted them. Specialist Juana's face appeared on a nearby screen. Captain, we're getting strange readings from the Ravager territory. One of the monitoring stations has gone silent. The peaceful moment evaporated instantly. Taekwon was already moving toward the command center before Juana finished speaking. Alert status. Get me Commander Bin Wu. Minutes later, they had the situation clarified. The monitoring station hadn't been attacked. The crew had discovered something. A Ravager queen communicating with her offspring. The transmission was being recorded and translated. Through chemical signals, the queen was teaching her young about the war. About the humans who could have destroyed them but chose mercy instead. About the treaty and what it meant. And then she said something that made everyone in the command center stop and listen. Remember the humans, the translation read. They are predators like us, but they chose to be more than their nature. We must do the same. Hunt only what we need. Harm only when necessary. Honor the treaty, not because we fear them, but because they showed us what it means to be strong and gentle at the same time. Taekwon felt something tight in his chest. The Ravagers, the creatures that had terrified the entire galaxy, were teaching their children about mercy, about honor, about being better than their worst instincts. They're learning, Jihai whispered. They're actually learning. The transmission ended with one final message from the Ravager Queen. 3 words in chemical form that the translation software struggled to interpret, but the meaning was clear enough. Thank you. Friends. Peace. Veltion Prime, who had been observing from a secondary console, turned to Taekwon. I don't understand you, Captain. You could have destroyed the Ravagers completely. They were defeated, helpless. Instead, you gave them a chance, and now they call you friends. Why?